I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Sarah Catherine Hook to talk all about the White Lotus. And one of the things I was really interested in was the transition of stepping into this character, because you really only had a few days after you wrapped on Cruel Intentions before stepping into this and flying out to Thailand. And there's such juxtapositions of who those characters are in terms of the emotional space, the physicality of them. And I was interested in how you use that time in between to really make such a transition and a shift.
Oh, I love that question so much. Um, that's and that's cool that you knew about that. It was unlike any other transition I've had to do before. Um, and it was tough too because I actually booked White Lotus over Christmas break. So I had the knowledge of Piper and I had the scripts with me, but I was still with Caroline for about a month and a half, and it was a little tough, like, finding the space and time while I was still with Caroline to explore Piper. Like, I had trouble compartmentalizing the 2 and felt, I really needed to, like, continue to give Caroline my full attention, but during we did have a few dialogue sessions, or accent sessions, whatever, dialogue, sorry, accent dialect, oh my god, accent work with Patrick and Sam and Jason, like, we would hop on calls to with, our accent coach, so that kinda helped get me into it just a little bit, but the tricky part about White Lotus is that it's just so ensemble that I didn't have too much to work with just yet, like from the scripts themselves. Like all of the family breakfast dinner scenes, Piper really only has a couple lines here and there. So I did kind of have to craft her a little bit in my mind before, and like, give her a worldview and like a background story, and especially like her relationship with her brothers and her mother, like every character having that. But honestly, she didn't really come to life in my brain until I actually got to Thailand and worked with the family. I think working with all of those actors, like, really helped inform her spirit and who she is, and I just I that's how and I do it's tough because I do like it just is every character needs something different, and I think because I felt that the family was a character in and of itself, I needed to work with them to know who this girl was. And then, of course, Mike's feedback and what he wants, and so I just was really learning on the job with Mike and everyone. That was a really long-winded answer, but I felt I needed to give it some space.
No, the details of it are so great, and I love how whenever I hear you talk about Piper, that I've heard you discuss the way that you found a lot of similarities or connections, and it kind of felt like reading a younger version of yourself.
Yes! She's like my little
And
sister.
within that, I was interested in how you kind of found those spaces where you were pulling in that personal connection and that younger self version, and where you wanted her to kind of really live and breathe on her own and be a little bit
Mm,
different as well.
totally. Yeah, it was kind of uncanny at certain moments just reading certain things that she said. So much so, this was really sweet. When episode 2 came out, one of my closest friends from college texted me being like, this girl is you. Like, this is so I've never seen a character so close to who you are." And he was like, even the way she talks about spirituality, like he and I have had like really, really beautiful in-depth conversations around faith and spirituality and religion and everything. So it's cool to be validated in that, like from your peers, to they see the similarities as well. And only the people who really know me are going to see that too. Um but especially in my time in college, I would say, did I relate to Piper the most because I left Alabama when I was 18 and went off to weird SUNY Purchase, like the weirdest school on the planet, and it was such a culture shock to me. And I was raised Christian, and then I was opened up to like a whole other world of just humans and their different beliefs and opinions and ideals, and That's kind of where I first started to learn about Buddhism. Like I was required in I went to school for opera, by the way, and our sophomore year, our opera director had us all read an Eckhart Tolle book, and I loved it so much. Like it, I totally changed the spiritual game for me. Like it was just a new. It was exactly what Piper was experiencing. Like probably growing up in like a more Christian based life and world, and then going off to school and discovering something new that she's really drawn to. Like, and I think that's really common for a lot of kids, not even just with religion and spirituality, but like anything. Like when you leave home and go off to college, you're gonna have you're gonna be introduced to so many different things that you were not raised upon. And so I don't know, I just felt like she really does represent that, I feel, for a lot of people. And like yeah, so I certainly had a very similar experience to her in that sense. Yeah.
One of the things that's really striking about her as well is just this kind of quiet fortitude and strength that she
Yeah.
has. You know,
Yeah.
she's not the loudest person in her family, and she's kind of a little bit more shy and withdrawn at times, but
Yeah.
also they can't bend her will and make her want to do anything different. You know, she's
Right.
very steadfast. And
Yes.
so how did you find that side of her, and how did that inform a lot of her scenes for you?
I love that, and I love that word for her, steadfast. I think that's just the building of Mike's storytelling and the dynamics that he wanted. And I fortunately love playing like very grounded, very real characters like Piper. And so it was like a yummy treat for me. Sorry, I need to clear my throat. Um, to be able to kind of be more of like the rock in the family. And I mean, she's also the reason why they're there. And especially with like the Buddhism aspect of it, like I knew that really needed to play into who she is, like that the practice of meditation needs to be there in me to 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 show that in her. um so I don't know. I guess also similarly to how her experiences with the rat lifts, I think I had a similar experience with my fellow actors because they were loud and exciting and colorful. And she and I both were in that space of, okay, I'm different from these people. Like I'm not going to be as like manic as everyone else. So I like to say Piper and I kind of leaned on each other a lot, and we went through it together.
She's also incredibly observational, and I've heard that you were reading William Esper's book about acting,
Um,
kind of prepping for this role, and that kind of really tapped into a lot of that observational side of her, and
yes.
how did that book really help you find that within her?
Well, so yeah, I love William Esper books. I read his first one a couple years ago, and then I read his second one. The second one is about building a character, and I was just reading it kind of while I was doing Cruel Intentions as well, because Caroline was such a specific character as well that I felt like I was building from the ground up. Um, but he mentioned this actress. I think she was from the 20s or 30s, Lorette Taylor, and how her method was to go around. Like her process was to show up to rehearsal and just watch all of her peers and see what they do, and like what their mannerisms. And that's so, I think I really liked that anecdote because that's very much how I am just in real life. Like I love people's quirks and idiosyncrasies. And I've always, even like as a small kid, have been more interested in people's mannerisms and behavior than anything else. Like I'm just, and anyone who knows me would also say that too, because I'm such a mimic and I love like just picking up on that stuff. So I think that just really resonated with me. And I felt like that specifically worked well with Piper because she is kind of like always watching everyone around her and trying to protect herself in doing that. Keeping her as safe, and don't pop my perfect spiritual bubble. But yeah, William Esper, God, what a genius. I wish I could have met and worked with him. I know he's passed, but his books have been essential in my craft building.
I love that you also just use that phrase of like the spiritual bubble that
Yeah.
Piper has, and that Mike allows us those little introspective moments. Of,
Yeah.
what is she doing in her room by herself? And, when she talks to her brother, she talks about how she feels a presence when she prays and when she
Yeah.
connects in that way. And so, how did those little vignette scenes really help you in building a lot of the texture of her?
That's something that I actually love and what I learned about Mike, and I didn't realize it in the other 2 seasons, but I then Mike showed us and when we all talked about it, he loves getting reactions from everyone. He's, like, really, really big on like, for example, that incredible scene between the 3 ladies, one of my favorite scenes of White Lotus as a whole, the dinner scene where they're talking about Trump, like, Michelle or Carrie will be talking, but the camera is on Leslie, where she's giving all of these, like, responses to what she's saying, and it's so good, and it's such good character building and storytelling, like, just through the listening, and, yeah, so I feel that that was a huge part of every single character, not even just mine, but, like, just and same with, like, even Sam as Lachlan, like, I he 'cause he says so little throughout, but his what you see in Lachlan just on those shots of just his face, like, responding or not responding to his family is just such good storytelling and great acting. Um, um, but yeah, I forgot the question, but I just got really excited by that.
I feel
Um,
like you get so many great reaction shots too, because
yeah.
even before we kind of get her verbally pushing back on her family or disagreeing with them, we have those reaction shots, so we already know what she's thinking. Did
Thinking,
you
yes.
did you already know that? Was that when you already knew that he was capturing that sort of thing and that that was gonna be part of it?
I think when with the scenes, I'm not sure. Like when I got to do like bulkier scenes, I wasn't thinking so much like how I want to react. Like I kind of just had to play the scene, especially when it is like these back and forth. But in the breakfast, dinner, family scenes where you don't have as much to say, you can think about it more. But when I actually had like some meteor dialogue. I wasn't thinking, and I think that would be bad if I was thinking about it more because it has to just come naturally, and that's where the comedy comes to play too. You know, when it just and then Mike is so good in the editing room too. He knows how to pick like the right frame of actors' reactions, and I mean even Jason throughout that whole dinner scene, like I mean him just in that stupor is just so funny and it's tragic and just great to come to him like during the fighting between Victoria and Piper. It's just awesome.
And in talking about Piper's relationship with her mom, Victoria, it's clear that she loves her and she's her mom, but she really doesn't agree with the values that her mom thinks are important and has tried to raise her kids with. And so
Mhm.
how did you want it to be a relationship that both is a space of love, but also a space of real conflict at the same time?
Great question. It actually kind of that relationship, the Saxon Victoria relationship, the Victoria Piper relationship, the Piper Timothy relationship, all kind of happened organically as we were filming. Like, I don't think anywhere in the script did it really say that this parent favored this child or this one this. It just it just kind of naturally evolved into all of that. Like Parker would make the choice to laugh at Saxon anytime he had an inappropriate joke. And then, by the way, the Piper knows stuff. I mean, that was happening while we were filming. Like it's not like a new thing. Like while we were filming in Thailand, even Mike would come up and be like, Piper, no. Like it would be like Saxon, Piper. Like it was so good. Like that type of favoritism. I loved it. I thought it was so funny. And it's so real. Like mothers favoring their like kind of like obnoxious, inappropriate son, like almost having like a crush on them and then like being harder on the like more idealistic daughter. Like I feel like that actually is kind of a real thing. But yeah, it was just a natural thing that occurred. It wasn't like I said, I don't think it was like in the script, like this is how it is going to be. It just those were just choices that everyone made, and it was really fun. But yeah, Piper definitely loves Victoria. Piper and Victoria Piper, of course. They just misunderstand each other. But you'll see there's real love there, and people will see it.
And we also kind of see how her relationship with her dad, with Jason Isaac's character,
Yeah.
he's kind of the buffer between the two of them a little bit more. And
Yeah.
again, he's ideologically different, but he
Mhm.
does have a different relationship with his daughter. And I love that scene with the two of you on the boat where she doesn't realize that he's taken her mom's lorazepam, and that's
Yeah.
why he's being so
He's
touchy-feely.
like,
But what was that space of filming that scene where he's like, I love you and you're so great and you're so perfect, but then he kind of starts smushing her face
oh,
randomly.
sweet. I love it. She's such a daddy's girl. I mean, I loved that scene the moment I read it. And it's so telling too of their dynamic and relationship. And one of my friends made a really good point. Like it that scene is so important to have for the audience to then have empathy for Timothy. Like he's a really not great guy, but like the I think the love that Piper shows to him, then you do kind of feel for him. And I just think it's a sweet moment for them, and a father-daughter, a real father-daughter moment. And yeah, and then the smushing of the face is just so great. And he really went actually on the day, like, Mike had to tell him to chill out because he really was, like, stretching my face at one point, and he was like, "Okay, okay, don't, like, rip her face off, please."
And she also even has very different relationships with her two siblings as well. And, again, with the details of you, that you're a middle child with an older and a younger brother, and so is Piper, and Saxon's the one that like she rolls her eyes at, but then also they will like physically kind of go at each other. And
Yeah.
then Lachlan, it kind of feels like it's the two of them against the world a lot of the time. And so how do you feel like the two of them have really been each other's buffers within the family and that they really understand each other in a unique way?
You mean Lachlan and Saxon or
Yeah.
Lachlan and Piper? Lachlan and
Lachlan
Saxon.
and Piper.
Oh, Lachlan and Piper. Yeah, I think, well, what it's mostly to do with where Lachlan stands, because obviously Saxon and Piper have beef for so many reasons, and for maybe reasons that we don't know as well. But Mike always says that Lachlan is a sponge, and whoever he is around, he kind of just soaks up their energy, and he's just so sweet, and he doesn't know what he wants yet. So that's why he's so easily influenced by both of them. Um, and I think, I mean, Piper with Lachlan, I think she really, more than anything, just sees his sweetness and his pureness, and sees a lot of potential, and is kind of like, we were saying this in our interviews for press, that everyone, all three of the Ratliff kids just want to be loved and validated. And it's same with Saxon too. Like Saxon trying to get Lachlan on board. It's like to validate his ideology, and like him as a person. Like I think all three of them are horribly insecure, and it's the same with Piper. She just kind of needs someone to be on board with what she's going through to make it easier for herself, I think.
Right, because there's a point in episode 6 where she talks about how she's really struggled with happiness and
Yeah.
has felt really lost. And you
Yes.
kind of also get the impression that she's had to keep a lot of that internalized and hasn't really been able to express it. And
Yeah.
so, what was your perspective on her experience of feeling that way for a long time, but not having any sort of outlet for it?
Yeah. Well, I kind of, that moment, I just realized this poor baby is depressed, and I think it's I don't know, I feel like everyone has been in that place. I mean, I certainly have, and it kind of like in filming that scene too, it just felt like a therapy session, really. And I think she really needed, like, it was I think that moment for her too was the safest she's felt in a long time, and she really trusted this man who she's received a lot of wisdom and learnings from. And I think it's such an important moment for her, and I'm relieved that she had that time and space to really like actually reveal like what is going on underneath the surface.
Because also, when she had to tell her parents, she didn't have the buffer of her siblings because they were off partying on the boat for
Yeah.
the night.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, And for you, what was the experience of going in and filming that scene and just how Piper felt in that moment, especially with her mom not even realizing which country she wants to move to?
You know, this, you make a really great point about the buffer thing, because thinking about it now, like I did feel pretty vulnerable. Like I again with the parallel feeling and experience to Piper, like Piper being kind of afraid of her parents, and it was similar to me. Like I'm I'm still relatively a new actor, and working with two of the greatest actors ever. Like I'm going up against them and with them. Like that was really intimidating, and I didn't have Patrick and Sam to rely on, and to have them be a buffer for me as well, like the same way that Saxon and Lachlan are for her. So it was pretty much everything in this show, like every scene, like I feel like I was kind of going through whatever Piper was feeling, like I was likely feeling the same way. So it didn't take too much to, like, the vulnerability of that dinner scene was all there and all real, because I felt it, and it was a big moment for Piper too, and it's the biggest show on the planet, so it's just yeah, pressure and nervous energy and all of the things, like it was all there.
Yeah, you did such a great job with that scene though.
Oh,
Like it
thanks.
really, really works out.
Appreciate it.
With Piper as well, there's so many details that kind of show the way that she's already been assimilating herself into this life, even though she hasn't gotten the chance to even visit before now. And,
Mhm.
she's not living there. Like the costume details, like the hues of orange that kind of connects to the colors of
Yes,
Buddhism, and the fact that she's taught herself certain words in Thai and always makes an effort to use it.
yes.
And so, what was the kind of backstory and history that you wanted to create of how she's really already been trying to step into this, even though she's not physically been there yet?
Yeah, I mean, she's a religious studies major, so I think these are all things that she knew before, and obviously going off to Thailand, I think she is one of those people who would just go all out in her education, and like in educating herself on the country, on the history, on the just everything. I mean, she's really smart too, and I think she's someone who loves learning. So I think that all of those things were intentional for her, like yes, and making sure she um is pronouncing the Thai language correctly, and like being considerate and understanding that I'm a guest in this country, like all of that I think was top of mind for her. And obviously I think it's clear, like, and she's quite embarrassed of her family's behavior, and so it's almost like she's trying to control, like, what, especially with the phone stuff too, and just wanting to be respectful of the culture. And yeah, and the nods with like the orange, all of that was very intentional on costume side of thing. And even I love, like, for the dinner scene, I'm wearing like that orange dress, and it's almost like this is like my monk garb, you know what I mean? And then like the orange bathing suit. I love all of those nods. And I just said this in another interview too. Like I said to Mike for the first episode, I was like, I want to look as kidnappable as possible. So everything had intention behind it. And so, and that's the same goes for Piper as well, like her intentions of being in the country, and how she wants to be.
Yeah, I love what you said as well about her being really embarrassed about her family's actions,
Yeah.
because when you step back and think about it, she really was trying to make this trip by herself and not have any of them there. And then her
Right.
dad booked them all on this. And
Yes.
so, how do you feel like the experience of this trip has just been something that's completely opposite to what she's envisioned it would be as a solo trip for herself to figure this all out?
Yeah. Well, I think, well, I don't know if she ever wanted it to be, she wants it to ultimately be a solo trip, but I think she needed daddy's money to get her there. And so in order to do that, it's like, let's make a whole vacation out of it. So I think she knew what she was signing up for. It's like, okay, there's going to be a cost to bringing the whole family, but this is the only way for me to get here. So like I think she knew she was going to have to do a little bit of a trade-off in that sense. Um, so But I think, you know, she knows her family, and I think she knew what to expect, and I mean, I feel that way sometimes, like, with my own family, like, I'm like, "Okay, everyone just we're you wanna control your family as much as possible, but at the end of the day, you just can't, like, you just they're gonna do and say whatever they're gonna do and say, and it's like, I'm like, "I'm not responsible for them, okay? Don't be mad at me." I'm trying to unlearn and remove myself from this. So I think that was her situation. So I think, yeah, she was probably nervous. She was probably nervous to bring them, but knew what she was signing up for in bringing them.
Do you get the sense that at home that Piper has other friends that kind of have this similar shared interest, or do you feel like it's something that kind of really sets her apart from a lot of her peers? Because even just the idea of her brothers being so excited to go and party on the boat, and then she's really just wants to kind of be at the hotel by herself and center herself, is obviously kind of even pulling her apart from them in a way.
I imagine she has, like, 2 solid friends who, like, love this stuff. Like, I doubt there's, like, a whole club. I mean, I'm sure I feel like, again, she is, like, extracurricular activity type girl, I think. So, I think she involves herself a lot, in the extracurricular stuff, but I do think it just feels so personal for her, so I can't imagine she has that many people to relate to on it, and I think that's another reason why she feels she needs to go all the way to Thailand to be with people who do relate to her. Otherwise, she would if she had that friend group, she probably would just stay in North Carolina, you know what I mean? So, I think that's why, like, she doesn't feel like she has anyone who can relate to her.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see the last couple of episodes, and you've done
Yay!
such a
Oh my
fantastic
god.
job with this. Thank you so much, Sarah Catherine.
Thanks. Thanks so much. Such a lovely interview. Thank you.